Greetings and welcome to an LGR thing. And today I have a smaller kind of thing, just a neat little piece of history to share, and something a little easier to edit while I'm working on more involved video projects, and that is the original IBM ThinkPad, technically speaking. I'm not trying to clickbait you, it really is just an IBM pad that says Think on it, hence it being colloquially known as the ThinkPad. Yeah, this is a real thing. Long before IBM started selling ThinkPad computers, the company distributed these little notepads to its employees, salesmen, and various associates. They referred to them as the pocket-sized ThinkJotter, and it measures 3 inches by 4.5 inches, or about the size of a billfold wallet. A nice compact little thing that's just the right size for fitting into a shirt pocket, and being that this was distributed at IBM, you know there were plenty of dress shirts with pockets to fill, a convenient spot to keep such a thing, so whenever you were struck with a brilliant idea for a new kind of cash register mechanism or something, you could whip out a pen and jot it down because you're someone that thinks. And whenever you used up the paper inside, IBM would provide refills if you wrote to the nearest IBM office, or in the case of my particular pad, the Eastern Regional Headquarters on Madison Avenue in New York City. And yeah, I just like the design of this a whole lot. Earlier ones, I believe, were actual leather with stitching and everything. This one's not, but it still has a satisfying leatherette texture with shiny gilded edges to the paper, each sheet of which is just thick enough not to let most inks seep through. And then there's the embossed golden lettering on the front that simultaneously screams classy and serious business, like only an IBM product could. And I'm not sure how old this particular ThinkJotter is, but the place I bought it from said it's from the mid-1950s, and yeah, it sure smells like it. It has that unmistakable aroma of a mid-20th century book, with the breaking down of various components in the paper and the decades-old mustiness mixing together to provide that oddly intoxicating nose feel. Sometimes I just like going to antique stores and libraries to smell this, and yeah, here we go. You got that aroma in the palm of your hand, and it's awesome. While I don't know how old this one in particular is, what I know for sure is that IBM distributed these ThinkJotters throughout most of the 20th century, and the whole concept was not only to provide somewhere for their IBMers to jot down any spur-of-the-moment ideas, but also to encourage them to think. Just think for a second before doing anything rash and non-IBM-like. Think was more than just a slogan. It was a corporate culture and a philosophy for doing business for them. And it was first used by Thomas John Watson Sr. in 1911, back before he was at IBM and even before IBM was IBM. And they were still known as the Computing Tabulating Recording Company, or CTR. Apparently, during a particularly lackluster sales meeting with National Cash Register, Watson spoke up, saying, "The trouble with every one of us is that we don't think enough. Knowledge is the result of thought, and thought is the keynote of success in this business or any business. We don't get paid for working with our feet, we get paid for working with our heads." So basically it was a more business-like way of saying, "Hey, think McFly, think!" Then when Mr. Watson arrived at CTR a few years later, he brought his think philosophy with him, and it also made for quite the striking and iconic trademark, and ended up being used on tons of IBM signs, marketing, exhibits, merchandise, and all sorts of stuff throughout the years. And of course, there were the Think notepads, which came in various shades of orange and brown originally, and then black, like the one I have, and featured slightly different lettering over the decades in terms of size and such. Sometimes it had an IBM logo on the back, sometimes not, but that overall aesthetic of think stayed pretty much the same. And then that brings us to the ThinkPad computer series, which in particular was quite directly influenced by the Think notepad. The story goes that when what would become the ThinkPad was in development, IBM employee Denny Wainwright had a Think notepad in his pocket. And inspired by that pad, he thought ThinkPad made sense for a computer. Especially in this case, seeing as the product they were naming was not a laptop, but a tablet with a stylus pen. What would become known as the ThinkPad 700T, and this is really kind of a digital successor to the original Think notepad anyway, so it made sense. However, IBM's corporate naming committee didn't like it. Initially, there was an issue with the computer being known simply by a name and not a number. How un-IBM was that? Most every computer was known by a 3 or 4 digit number. They also sold so many products overseas that there was a concern that ThinkPad wouldn't translate super easily into different languages. However, the name made it into the press while the device was still in development, and they friggin' loved it. So it just kind of stuck. They went with the name, and the ThinkPad line became one of the most famous portable computer series. That's a story for another day, but anyway, yeah, the Think Notepad, man. There's just something supremely satisfying about these things, while also being a little bit off-putting, if I'm honest. It almost comes across as speaking down to you, reprimanding you for not doing something so simple as putting two thoughts together. But being vaguely condescending or not, at the same time, I just like notepads, and having one from old school IBM is kind of neat as someone who enjoys their retro PCs. And if you want to enjoy one yourself, it turns out finding originals secondhand, even new old stock ones, is not too difficult either, with a nice one ranging anywhere from 10 to 20 bucks online currently. And they remain popular enough that IBM actually still sells new versions of them complete with refill packs, as well as a crapload of other Think merchandise that I had no idea about until I was starting to make this video, and now I kind of want some of it, but then again I don't. Corporate culture kind of weirds me out. But anyway, yeah, that's about it for this video. It's just a little piece of tech history that I find fascinating and felt like sharing, and I hope that you enjoyed taking a look as well. And if you did enjoy this, then cool. It's a little simpler and shorter than I normally do, but hopefully you enjoyed enough to maybe want to see some more, and there are new videos coming out every Monday and Friday here on LGR. And as always, thank you very much for watching.